everybody. Welcome back to the Primas Podcast. I am Cindy, and that's my beautiful prima, Jess.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Prima.
Hey.
I'm digging your new background. Is this going to be it for a bit? Because I love the peace logo in the back.
I don't know. I think for right now, it's like ASMR vibes. I know, like, people are like, no, it's not. Stop it. But this is my version, like, of
I like it.
Being a YouTube person. I'm bad at it, but my heart's in the right place.
You're an influencer. Say it, Prima. Own it.
No, I'm
just
not
kidding.
Like, don't give me that type of responsibility. No. And good. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to repeat, just because you never know who might be listening for the first time or who hasn't listened in a while. We are never the ones to tell you, like, listen to what we're saying. We're huge on doing your own research, because I feel sometimes I'll look back at our other episodes where I'm like, oh my God, I've learned, and I would have presented that differently now, where someone can be like, well, she said it, you know, we're easily influenced as people. And so we're not those people that are saying, listen to us. We're saying, yeah, this is what we thought of. What do you think? Do your own research, give us your own ideas, because we're just, you know, we're just out
little
here.
Primas, little Primas from the hood who study psychology, and we love to talk about it. So great point.
We're no one. Okay. So today we are going to talk about coffee.
Ooh. I know. I feel a little like sad. Like I got a little teary-eyed. Yeah. This is a tough topic. It's a very touchy subject. You know, you didn't know how much it was going to influence like these emotions in me, because I love caffeine. It was such a positive connotation, but thanks to Cindy, made it negative and makes me want to throw up now. Every time I hear caffeine, I've conditioned my mind to like want to vomit. I hope you're happy.
Well, that's a withdrawal symptom. Just kidding. But we're going to talk about that. So no. Yes, caffeine, coffee, I guess in that form, right? Because caffeine can be in different substances, but like for us, let's talk about how we use the drug. It's a psychoactive stimulant, which means that's fancy for it stimulates our central nervous system, where in other terms, you can have substances that depress the central nervous system. Alcohol is an example of a depressant. And so a stimulant is something like cocaine, caffeine. Hallucinogenic is like mushrooms, other psychedelics. But anyway, again, we are not pros. This is just something we're interested in because we are coffee goers. We sip on that coffee. How do you like it, Prima?
I feel like this topic has been in the works for a bit. And at first I'm like, man, Prima, you're so silly. Like, how could we make a topic off of caffeine, right? It's so simple. It's not even complex or anything. And as we started doing research, as I started self-analyzing my own addiction to it, because I didn't like using that term addiction, but that's what it is. I'm addicted to like my coffee in the morning, which has caffeine. I kind of did that. You saw how I just like rolled out caffeine. It's very Gen Z, right? Like combining two words to make a new one. And I recall when I had went out, I think in October, to Denver, and you pointed it out. You're like, wow, Prima, I didn't realize like how much you drink coffee like throughout my day, right? And it wasn't even decaf. It was just regular like coffee. And I'm like, yeah, I really crave it. I enjoy drinking it. I love the taste of it. And it is my morning go-to. That's the first thing I have when I wake up. So this is going to be a very touchy topic for me today.
Yeah. So welcome to your intervention. I didn't want to say anything. Come out, guys. Come out, guys. No, just playing. But yeah. So like Jessica said, we drink coffee a lot. Also, I want to point out that I don't, for example, drink brewed coffee, which is a more concentrated version of caffeine. We drink mostly instant coffee, which still has caffeine in it, I rarely dabble in like Starbucks or like those types of places. And if I do, I get decaf because their stuff is way too strong for me. Or I'll get something where it's like half and half, right? Like I'm like, I'm not used to like the real stuff. But I think for us in the culture, it was also very like ritualistic. I think that's the biggest part that we're dependent on. Because so I started to drink coffee. Hi, my name is Cindy, and my first cup was when I was 3. And it was my grandma. And it was very ritualistic. It's what you did in the morning. Everyone got coffee with right? With sweet bread. And that's just what you did. It wasn't, but it was every morning, and then sometimes even in the evening, which those times were cool. But then when we're off to the world, we can just have it whenever we want, and then we do, right? I'm down to, I have 2, one in the morning and then one midday, but I crave it now because the creamer part, right? Like whatever type of creamers or sweeteners you use, now you're adding to your dependency, because one is caffeine and then the other one is sugar. If you're adding, even a lot of like the powdered creamer contains sugar. It contains corn solids, which again in our body it turns into sugar. It might not feel sweet for us because it's not sugar technically, but yes, there is sugar in it. And so
before you go like more into it, my experience, because we both thought about it, right? Like when we were going to present this topic, we went into like, well, what was our earliest memory for both of us? Like when we started drinking coffee, and for mine was very similar to yours, even though it was a different grandmother. It wasn't like the same shared grandmother we had. It was my mom's mom. And my earliest memory of drinking coffee was like 6, 7 years old, and drinking it with pan dulce as well, because I would dunk in my pan dulce and then eat it, So maybe I really wasn't drinking the cup, or they didn't allow me to, but nonetheless, it was still mixed with sugar, like you said. So it was that pairing for me that always, it was just like a cultural thing. Like you said, like we all sit down and drink coffee together. We all sit down when we're getting together, or even after a meal, we'll eat coffee, drink coffee, and have like a little sweet bread and share it together. So it's always been mixed in that kind of environment, or I've been conditioned in that environment. It's like after a meal, we'll pour some coffee and share like a pastry together. And so since we were kids, we were introduced to this drug. I'm going to start referencing as a drug because that's essentially what it is. We're so dependent on it. And we're going to have withdrawal symptoms, just like any other drug out there.
So, and I think that we were being called to this topic because I've also never thought of caffeine dependence as a big issue, because my justification was I'm not a Starbucks person. I'm not someone that needs to brew my coffee in the morning. However, my way is like either I warm up a cup of water and then I pour it and then I stir it. A lot of people are like, that's disgusting. Like real coffee drinkers are like, that's gross. And it is. Now that I've learned, like it is, like don't do instant coffee. But that's also in our culture. Like no one had brewed coffee. You had instant Nescafe. It's just, like that's kind of how I was introduced to it. And so I saw this episode of the Joe Rogan podcast where he had this guy called Michael Pollan, who is the author of the book he was presenting on the podcast called This Is Your Mind on Plants. And it was really cool because I would have never in my life thought to hear what I'm about to say. So he said that he quit drinking for 3 months and
drinking caffeine, right?
Drinking caffeine. And not just caffeine, but any other forms of coffee. He really wanted to like remove it from his system, like a cleanse. So like chocolate also contains that. And what else did he say? I think that was it. But he just made sure like teas, like if he was going to drink something else, made sure that there was no caffeine in it because he wanted to experiment. What is this going to look like? So the first time he had a drink of coffee after the 3 months, he said it was the most psychedelic drug experience he's ever had. And you think of the drugs that, that are in the world that are like, oh my God, and you think that's pretty heavy. And we don't compare coffee to heroin.
To meth, exactly.
To meth. because it's like, oh my God, how could you? But
because it's legal. Yeah. It's a perception of it, right?
Well, the thing is, if I've been consuming, even if it is small dosages, because it's processed, right? It's instant coffee. The point is, I've never known how to be without caffeine, because it stays in our system, right? Like, okay, you get your coffee and you're thinking all morning, I'm not going to get it till the morning, but then in the morning you get it. When do we know? When do we know not to be under the influence of coffee? So I was like, oh my God, I want that experience. I want to cleanse myself, see what happens. And then also like have that first cup of coffee, because it doesn't have to be 3 months. You know, you're going to feel the change whether you do it for, like, if you're a regular like us, even 10 days, you're going to experience withdrawal symptoms. That's what you experience, period, in the beginning. So even just that is going to be pretty interesting it would be pretty interesting to be like, just kind of go through the motions, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And I've always heard of that, just withdrawing from caffeine. And I'm like, I don't think I'd have withdrawal symptoms. I've gone without coffee for like 1 or 2 days for like whatever reason. Maybe it was traveling. It's just one of those situations where I couldn't get to it, where I'm like, I was fine. But
how long was that period, would you say? Like a day or so?
Like I said, 1 or 2. Yeah. That's not enough. Yeah. It's still in your system.
Yeah, but you can start experiencing withdrawal symptoms as early as, I think, within 24 hours. So it might have been very mild. And like you said, you don't drink it as often. So the effects probably weren't as prevalent as as going like a whole week without it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever I cannot recall a time where I didn't have it the following morning. I think if I don't have it, I'm an early bird. I usually wake up 6:30 in the morning. And if I don't have it within an hour of waking up, I'll start feeling things. And for sure by 10 a.m., I'll be very, very irritable.
Irritable?
Yeah. I would be. So I don't go of long periods of time without it. And I can't even recall. Like you said, you had a memory where it wasn't so long ago, right? Where you didn't have it for like a day or so. I cannot tell you.
I think my thing is like, when people ask me, like, even with weed, like I've heard people have weed withdrawal. I'm a regular smoker. And so like if someone has withdrawals from that, I've never experienced that, where again, I go on certain trips, maybe out of the country, where it's like, well, I'm not going to go out of my way to get weed. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And I don't feel that. But again, we're so used to it where like you said, you might not even notice, or I could attribute it to why I didn't sleep well. Or I did, I haven't ate, right? Like we don't really know. We don't really know unless you really get it out of your system for a good amount of time. I think that's when it's going to be telling, because even after your withdrawals, in any drug, your body, what's happening during withdrawals is like, I don't know how to function without this, but it comes to a certain period of time where your body's like, okay, now I'm going to relearn how to adapt and be without this, whatever it is for us, right? And so then there's that phase. So the longer you go, the more, for this guy, he said that he was finally functional at that 3-month mark. And then he had coffee. But you know what I mean? Like, it's still very, and I think everyone's very different, right? Like for you, like you said, it's very sensitive, like until 10 or whatever. And you know what I mean? For someone, it could be, oh, I can go a week and I won't feel anything, but like, can you go past that week? Right. So I think it's very different in every single system, how these reactions occur as well.
Yeah. And it made me even question like what led up to where I am today, And even one of my first jobs was at Starbucks, and that like deeply contributed to my addiction, because I literally fell in love with it then. I learned how to like make my own coffee, and I love brewed coffee. That is my go-to. And I just love all forms of it. And I've like mastered my cup of coffee, and I feel very deeply about it. So it's like this relationship that I like love.
Bond. You're like, it understands me.
Like you see, I'm not that ready. Like I talk about it, and after seeing that video you showed me, which was the Joe Rogan Experience, that little clip, I'm like, I want to do it, right? I want to not be addicted, but it hurts me. Like, I don't think I'm where you are, but I'm starting to like climb that ladder of like, I don't want to be dependent on any substance, right? And I keep using it like these terminologies that like we're drug addicts, but essentially we are caffeine addicts. It is a type of drug that our body does become dependent on.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's pretty cool, because it's something like caffeine that we're talking about. And just again, the way that we sometimes might not pay attention to something that's like a cultural conditioning thing, where it's like, well, this is how I've always eaten my beans, or this is how I've always, right? Because that's just what we've known. Like, well, we've always, I think brewed coffee smells so good. Like the Starbucks stuff you were talking about. I may not participate, but anywhere there's a Starbucks, come on, you're like, you just like take it in. And I remember when we would partay, right, back in the day, you were so committed. And I think it's because you knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Like we would get home really late and just plastered. Right? Like,
right.
And in my head, I'm like, oh, it's a Saturday. Like I get to sleep in. Like I'm already planning, like I'm going to be okay. My body's going to recover. And you were like, I have like an hour, because you would open Starbucks. What time would you open at 5?
Like 5:30, I think. Yeah, I had to be there like at 5.
You were 3. Yeah. And then you were like
a power
okay, I have an hour. And I'm like, there is no way you could wake me up after everything we just did and to go and like really have to go and use my brain. Or otherwise, we were also very responsible, like where we wouldn't. There were times where you're like, no, I don't know. There were just times where you're like really strict, and I'm like, chill. You've done this before. You're like, no, Cindy, I got to open tomorrow. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty intense. But it's like you told me, you're like, because as soon as I get there, I'm just gonna, right, like espresso it.
And it was like another drug, right? Like all the other alcohol I was drinking would be a downer and put me to sleep, but then this other stimulant would like wake me right up.
Yeah,
like I didn't know what I was doing, but that's essentially what I was doing. I'm like, alcohol, okay, that's why you fell asleep, but I woke up because of like the caffeine.
Yeah, that was intense. I was like, good for her. I could never.
Good for her.
Like to just wake up, like you would go out and you're like, no, that's fine, I'll wake up, I have 2 hours to sleep. I'm like, what?
It's like now we know our body doesn't even go into deep sleep until like a few hours after. Those are power naps, not even deep sleep.
I don't think that did much, because when we drink, like that stays in your system for a while. So like you were probably drunk at work, but alert. So it's balance. So one fact that I saw was that 90% of the world's adults consume this psychoactive drug. So
how much?
90% of the world.
Dang.
Adults. That's what he said. That's what Michael Pollan said.
Dang. So there's 10% of humans in the world that do not consume any caffeine.
I guess.
I want to meet those people. I want to see how they function. I'm like, no, I know someone in my life right now who doesn't drink coffee, or they don't need it. And it always trips me out. Like in the rare instances that I do come across these people, it seems like a rare, like almost extinct population, where I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And I asked that person a lot, like, how do you do it? How do you not drink coffee? They're like, yeah, we just don't drink coffee. Yeah, like, it's so mind-blowing to me. It's so like out of our social norm.
Yeah, that's true. And remember, I think the biggest point here is like Starbucks is a big example. And I know Starbucks is not the only coffee house in the world. So generally speaking, I think with younger adults, like I remember with when I was teaching at the high school, like the teens would come in with their, whether it was McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever it was. But again, they weren't just pairing the caffeine aspect. Now you're pairing it with creamer, which is a fat, and we love fat. And then like for survival reasons, like that's sugar, right, is another one. And so if you have like these, I don't know the names because they're elaborate, but like, the things that really do attract kids, they would, and they wouldn't get the small one. I'm like, how do you afford? And I'm like, well, they don't have rent, Cindy, like, don't be rude. But you know what I mean? Like these things were so expensive. And So I think for younger adults, it's important to note that, because someone might think, well, no, I don't drink coffee, because they're thinking of the traditional or whatever. And it's just like, caffeine is in a lot of things, like in chocolate, in teas, in seeds and nuts. And we don't consume nuts or seeds like that. But one thing that we do like is that coffee drink, whatever our preference is. Mm-hmm. The other example is energy drinks, because I think that's also a certain demographic, right? Like some people are like, this is my shit. Like I don't necessarily drink coffee, but I have like 3 Red Bulls a day, or, I know people like that, or soda. And again, all of these things are paired with sugar. So that just causes like a super hybrid addiction, because you're like, it's not just the caffeine component, it's also the sweetener. And we've talked about this before, where the sweeteners, depending on where they're coming from, also are really, really bad and highly addicting. So yeah, I wanted to point that out, that it's not just really sipping coffee. It's all of those components, because we can get addicted to something that has some fat and sugar. Like that's the best combination. Chocolate is fat, sugar, and caffeine. I love chocolate's my ish. But
I know.
Okay.
And you know what? That's a good point, because when I was like thinking about what I prefer, mine is always hot coffee. Mm-hmm. Like I judge people who drink iced coffee, because I'm just like, that's not its original form. You know what I mean? And then they have so much sugar to me at that point, because they're like, oh, well, it's iced vanilla coffee or iced vanilla latte or like caramel macchiato. And then I'm like, yeah, you're just making that connection where like it now coffee and caffeine is paired with so like outweighs by sugar now. So it's like, yeah, they're getting a little bit of caffeine, but it's way more like prominent with like sugar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really don't like mine. Mine is very like simple, it's like brewed coffee with a splash of my creamer, and it has to be hot though. That's my preference. Mm-hmm. Even when it gets like room temperature, I have to reheat it. So mine is also like conditioned to like where it's burning my lips. Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. Me too. I like it hot. Cold, I can drink cold coffee like in the summer, like if it's really, really hot, but I still need my morning coffee to be hot. Like for me, I need a hot beverage. So I wanted to also say, earlier we said we used the word psychoactive. So a psychoactive drug is anything that changes your brain chemistry. And this can happen like with a substance like chocolate, where we kind of get like a little bit of happy, we get a little dopamine hit. And obviously all of the substances we hear a lot about, like meth, cocaine, weed, heroin, the new popular one, fentanyl, right? Like some of these substances, like it changes our chemistry, but you can look at substances on a spectrum, because again, we've normalized caffeine, but this person had a psychedelic reaction to it. I didn't know coffee had that type of impact. How could I know if I'm always on it?
Yeah, we've been on it since our like longest memory.
Yeah. And okay, so caffeine also is used in ADHD medication, in others, but when I was in college, I specifically studied, when we studied like migraines and ADHD, I remember like the medication given, when I took psychopharmacology. So the medication given had a very high level of caffeine. And it's like, wait, how can a person with ADHD get prescribed something with caffeine in it? And it's because it has kind of like a countering effect, where it gives you that more controlled, focused. It's pretty cool. Like caffeine is a really cool plant. We get so many cool. Caffeine is not a plant. The seeds that the coffee
chemical
come from. Yeah. It also has a lot of medicinal components. So I think, I don't want to say like, if you drink coffee, you're bad. And if you don't cleanse, and if you're dependent, no, not at all. I just like the idea that we can compare something, and it's not something crazy like, oh, I have a nicotine addiction, or I have a drug. Like we're addicted to meth. Let's talk about it, right? This is caffeine where we've normalized it so much. We give it to our kids. I don't, because my child has a lot of energy, and it takes a lot to like, for her to like really express that energy. So I'm really like careful about her sugar and caffeine intake when she's with me, at least. And, but in our culture, still to this day, I still see it, you know, and of course, parents, grandparents, they're not doing it maliciously. They're doing it again, because it's very ritualistic. It's just something we've done for a long time. But I think it's cool to bring up that it is pretty powerful when you remove yourself from it. And this can be applied to anything that someone might be dependent on, right? Like, just try it out, just try out. So the next part of our conversation is the challenge.
Cindy came up with a genius idea. Now I'm a little like skeptical, because I'm just like, it's approaching and I'm shaking and look, my hands are sweaty, because I'm just like, the thought of it.
No, man.
I don't know. I'm gonna back out when I have to go to this AA meeting with you.
So I thought it would be cool to do what that guy did. And I would love to experience that, because I feel that that's something that I can do. I don't know about you, Jessica, you know, like, because I feel like you have, again, maybe a different maybe you've built up your tolerance, right? Like, I don't think you're in a big city. I think if I would have continued my working career in California, it was either going to be crack or up the caffeine, because you need to really, just kidding. But, you know, like, it's a stimulant. These are very attractive stimulants, especially if they're in every single corner. You can go get coffee anywhere. So again, it's very accessible. It's cheap. Some people have Starbucks money, but even if you don't, you can get a cup of coffee for like $1. Or there's rewards cards, right? There's like a lot of little rewards that it's like, if you eat here, you get unlimited coffee. Or if you pump gas here, you know, you get rewards and you get unlimited coffee, that type of stuff. Or unlimited soda, same thing. So the challenge, I kind of do want to do like a longer one. I think you should choose what you think is going to be successful. Like, if it's 5 days, 10 days, whatever you think it is. But the challenge is to cleanse ourselves from caffeine for a blank period amount of time. So I don't know, we should name it so we can hold ourselves accountable. I think I'm going to do 3 months like that guy did, Michael Pollan.
Dang. Yeah, and I've been giving this a lot of thought, because we talked about this like about 2 weeks ago when I was out in Denver. We're like, okay, like, you brought up the idea of a challenge, and I'm like, I could do it. I could do it 10 laps around Cindy, like, for sure, right? Because that was the competitive, like, in me talking.
You just gotta get now that it's to compete, and she'll do some crazy shit where you're like, oh, I won. Like, okay. I'm the least competitive person, so when someone tries to compete with me, I'm like, you can take it. You can win.
So I thought about it, and in my work field, I remember this term that like we use a lot, and it's called like harm reduction. So I would want to reduce the amount of caffeine before I completely go cold turkey, because it's just not in my nature to like completely go cold turkey. Like, even when I'm doing this vegan diet, I'm doing it in segments. I'm not completely like eliminating all animal product from my diet. And that's how I feel about this challenge. Like, I do want to reduce the amount. So I've already switched my coffee from regular to decaf. And yes, there's still caffeine in decaf, but it's a lesser amount, right? It's not as much as like a regular cup of coffee, and then so forth. And then that next week, I'm going to start doing like decrease the amount of cups I have a day, you know, like right now, honestly, Prima, I think it's like 5 or 6. So my goal is by the week after, limit to two a day, you know, that's it. And then the week after, like, do something else. But I don't think I have it in me to completely go cold turkey. And then like that also made me think about this one time. I had a professor, and I think I mentioned the story to you, where she removed, she said she also wanted to cut back on her caffeine or her coffee. So she started with like substituting her coffee for her tea. And then when she got comfortable with that, okay, tea to just plain hot water. And then that's what she drinks now. Like, she loves that hot taste. And I feel like I also crave that hot, like, thing on my mouth. So eventually I just want to like do it in increments.
Okay. That's a different approach.
Yeah. But I don't know if I'm ready, because I feel like you've given it a lot of thought. It's like you said, since October, I think you've been thinking about it a lot more, you know? And I remember that comment you made towards me when you're like, "Whoa, Jess, you drink a lot of coffee," you know? And I was like, "Prima, what the hell are you talking about?" But that like stood out in my mind, you know? And then like 2 months later, we talk about it again, and you presented this challenge, and I'm just like, I'm down for it, but I'm kind of scared. I'm not going to lie about these symptoms.
No, and I think
symptoms.
That's kind of like when, that's a good way to look at it too, you know, like if you want to set yourself for success. And so decreasing it and really holding yourself, like, because the point of all of this isn't to like stop drinking coffee, because I don't think coffee is bad. I think our dependency that, oh, if I don't have it, I'm going to get in a bad mood, or I'm going to get withdrawals. That type of stuff is like, right? Like I want to experiment and see what does it feel like? Because one thing that I think the reason why I'm also more willing to go longer is because my motivator is like my skin type.
Mm-hmm.
I remember cutting eggs for a while. Eggs is like my favorite food. And I remember before I got pregnant, like I cut it. I cut eggs because of the hormone concentration. I'm back on eggs, but you know, still like there's times where I'm like, let me see if this is going to help my face. I stopped eating chicken for a long time as well because of the way chicken is processed in the United States. And so I'm like, I wonder, you know what I mean? So one thing that I've never been able to cut out has been caffeine. And so I think that's my motivator. It's like, I wonder if this is going to hydrate my face, because caffeine is like a diuretic. It has diuretic properties. And anytime you consume something that causes diarrhea, your body isn't able to absorb water. Right. So I'm just like, I wonder if, because I drink a lot of water. That's the only thing I drink is coffee and water. Like I don't really have a problem with drinks. Drinks is not, it's something that a lot of people are like, oh, you're so disciplined. And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm naturally inclined. Like if I can have a donut or a sugary beverage, I'm going for the donut. Like there's no way I'm going to compromise those liquid calories. I don't know. I just never cared too much. But if that is your thing, then you should look at it as, how many cups am I drinking a day right now? If I'm drinking 5, cut it down to 4. And that's gonna cause something. And if I'm drinking 4 the following week, 3, right? However you want to look at it, but you want to pay attention to your withdrawal symptoms, how you're feeling, and then seeing the difference. And so we'll report back out, right? Like next podcast or something.
Yeah. Well, we said we want to do for a little bit, you know, and I think this is going to be like a continuous topic, but I would like to document like our journey, because, you know, who we are today is not who we're going to be at the end of this. And I liked when I watched the end of the Joe Rogan, like video clip, which we'll put on here that you had sent me. I liked when he said how clear he felt and how like amazing he slept after removing caffeine. That it was like the best sleep he'd had since his teenage years. And things like that, you know, we're always talking about like longevity, and our bodies are constantly changing. So I like that idea. I like this challenge. I don't think it's harmful in any way. And it's just a crazy concept, because I'd always thought that too. Like, I love this. Why would I ever give this up? But it is about balance. And I want to just see how I feel without it.
Yeah. Okay, the sleep is a good one. Thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that, yeah, a lot of our sleep issues, I don't have too many sleep issues. I think as a mom of a young child, like you get tired pretty quickly. But I do feel like I don't go into deep sleep, how he was talking about. We don't even know what that is. A lot of us don't know. A lot of us think it's normal to wake up during the night and just get like a little interruption and you go back to sleep. But that's not supposed to happen, because you're interrupting your sleep cycles. So I'm looking forward to that, because I feel like I'm always tired, even though I sleep a lot. Like I'm still like, you know, and when quality sleep, exactly. Like being able to stay in that REM sleep when you're supposed to be there, no interruption. If you do get interrupted, you're going to feel it later because you weren't able to recharge really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to cinnamon tea.
Oh, that's right. You had mentioned that, and I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Like boil some canela sticks.
Yes. So what I want to do is, because I want to set myself up. And so in the morning, I still want to warm something up, like you said, and drink it while I'm getting ready. Like that's my ritual. And then the rest of it, I drink on my way to work. And I still sometimes have a little bit more, and I just try to make it last. But so it's a mason jar, and you can still add, there's a lot of teas and herbal teas that don't have caffeine in them. So look up what, might work for you, but you can still add creamer and sweetener. I'm going to try not to, because I'm also trying to stay away from sugar, but I'm still going to add the coconut milk. Not coconut milk, sorry. Oat milk is really creamy. So I highly recommend that for creamer substitutes. So what I'm going to do is meal prep like jars, like mason jars, the medium 16-ounce ones, into the cinnamon tea, warm it up, put the oat milk, and then just go about my day. And that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to have something in place so that I'm not like, But
yeah. I think I'm gonna decrease it, and then I want to do that. So I see myself in like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, like substituting my hot cup of coffee for like that hot cup of cinnamon, and adding the creamer, like you said.
That's good.
Yeah, because I already told you, I already substituted my regular cup of coffee to decaf. So that was like step 1. Next week, I'm gonna like decrease the number of cups I have, and then my goal is to just have that one cinnamon like cup of coffee. Well, not cup of coffee, cup hot drink a day.
If that's what you need.
I know.
No, just plain. But yeah, so we wanted to talk about. Dang, this is
taking a deep breath. You're like, I feel like it's happening right now. Stop, Prima.
Your body knows, and your body's like, don't do it.
No, don't listen to her.
Yeah.
We're going to start cutting you off, Prima.
I know. So we hope you guys join in. If you are not a coffee drinker, but there's something that you want to give up for Lent, just kidding. It's not Lent, but kind of, right? Like the idea is, I'm not giving up on coffee forever. I don't think it's unhealthy. I think the way that we drink it is becoming unhealthy, but because we're like, well, I can't be in a good mood in the morning if I don't have coffee. I can't be in a good mood on my second shift. My second shift is when I pick up my daughter from school. I got to be ready. And so that's when I have and it's just like, you don't, well, okay. So if you don't, you're saying that, you know what I mean? Like you're putting so much power on this substance. So it's like, you should be able to function without it. Come on. You can have 1 cup of coffee. I think that's healthy. Like if I clean myself for 3 months and then go back to just 1, because I was at 1 until I had my daughter.
Dang. Then
after that, it's like, there's no way people can survive off drugs and being a mom.
I know.
Kidding, guys, I'm not for like drug use. Hey, do what you want to do. Not our business. But yeah, thanks for listening. Give us your
topic. Yeah.
Let us know what you
I can't believe how fast. Sorry for I keep cutting you off, but I'm like, wow, it's like we just started. And
I think this is one of those topics that touches right here.
I know. Maybe I felt like I was dreading it, but I'm like, wow, it went by so quick.
Yeah, and look at your withdrawal symptoms, pay attention, like be very self-aware and experiment with yourself. But like I said, if caffeine is not the thing for you, then if there is something else that's maybe like lighthearted, because I don't want to get into like, what if someone has intense withdrawals from like trying to quit cigarettes? Like, I don't really know. I've never smoked cigarettes, so like, I can't say to that, but something like caffeine, or I don't know, what is something else people might be like dependent on that we don't think about it like that?
Like sweets. I automatically thought of like
sugar, like,
yeah, but a lot of people have it. Like you said, it goes in the or cup of soda cans a day or energy drinks. That's like true. That, like very minimal substitutes.
Yeah, like if you're used to having 3 Red Bulls a day, try moving forward with just 2. Because I feel like that's hard, right? Like if whatever you're used to and waiting for, and if you don't get it, that's hard. So, challenge yourself in whichever way you want. We just thought it would be cool since it's still January and we're like, let's start off, intense. Rattle things up. But yeah, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. I'm going to put the title of this guy I was telling you about, Michael Pollan. I think that's a pretty cool little podcast. And if it's too long, because Joe Rogan's clips tend to be super, like episodes are really long, like just look at the clip where he's talking specifically about caffeine and his experience with it. All right. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to go have a cup of coffee before we get started. Just like, bathing it.
I'm going to start taking shots of that,
Espresso.
Oh, I don't do espresso. Good point.
What did you say?
Hi, everyone. I don't do espresso. We don't do espresso. Yeah, it tastes different.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.